We have a new socialist president in France and in Greece. The governing coalition has lost its parliamentary majority. It's unclear who'll form the next government in Greece, but all the main parties have said they'll seek to renegotiate the terms of Greece's loan deal with the European and international community. So could the change of government in France have a big impact on the direction the EU takes in the next few months? From France, we're joined by Parisian-born Nabila Ramdani, who's been following the presidential election campaign. We can hear too from Denis McShane, former Europe Minister and Labour MP for Rotherham, and Dick Roche is with us. He was the Republic's Minister for European Affairs. And they're all with us on Evening Extra. Good evening to you. Can I come to you first of all, Nabila, and ask you about Monsieur Hollande? He says the treaty as it is, this is the so-called Stability Treaty, he says it will not be ratified as it is. Is he open to compromise on that, the new president?
Well, he made it very clear throughout his campaign that he will reopen negotiations on the EU fiscal pact. And he said that he would like to impose a new chapter on growth creation. And, you know, this is his deep conviction. But we also have to bear in mind that he also would like to keep his close allies with him. That is the hard left in France, which was led by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, of course, the Green Party, who will prove to be crucial for the forthcoming legislative elections in June. So I think once the June elections over, we will see a more pragmatic François Hollande, who will, it's a treaty which had been negotiated painstakingly by both Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, and former President Nicolas Sarkozy. And I doubt it very much that François Hollande will reopen this huge can of worms. In my opinion, it's all rhetoric to unite the left for the moment. But, bear in mind, he's a unifying force. He's not a conviction politician. He's a safe pair of hands, administrator.
Well, let's just consider that a bit more. Dick Roche, doesn't his victory, though, in as much as it reflects an anti-austerity vote, make it that much more difficult for the government to get a yes vote in the Republic's referendum?
Well, I suppose any event such as this during the course of a referendum campaign is a bit of a nightmare for anybody running a referendum, because as we all know, in a referendum you ask a question, you get answers to everything else. I think that the government and the pro-treaty forces in Ireland will have to focus very clearly on something that should have been focused on in any event in the campaign, and that is explaining the significance of this particular treaty, the fact that it is not the end of the road but very much the beginning of a process, and that it's very significant in Ireland's context. I agree with the point that Mr. Hollande, I doubt very much is that he has any idea or he has any belief that the treaty will be subject to renegotiation at this point. It is a difficulty. There is no doubt it's a difficulty, and it was one of the issues that I have to say I had some concerns about when a date for 31st May was set for the Irish referendum. I always believed it would have been much better to put the referendum to a later point in the year and to allow the decisions in France to go ahead.
Denis McShane, do you think Hollande's victory makes it harder to persuade the Irish to vote yes in the referendum?
Frankly, I agree completely with Dick Roche. I didn't understand why the Irish Attorney General was so keen on a referendum. It was pretty clear that the tectonic plates already were moving, because it's not just Mr. Hollande, the President of the European Central Bank, Manuel Rajoy, the new Conservative Prime Minister of Spain. There are other countries. The Dutch government's collapsed, the Greek government's collapsed. It's complete chaos down there. So somebody should have been smart enough in Dublin to actually read a few papers other than the Irish Times and work out, as Dick says, now was not the right time. I think George Osborne still believes in austerity. Maybe some German politicians still do, but the rest of Europe's decided that when you bleed the patient to near death, it's perhaps time to change the cure before he dies.
Well, Nabila, just on that, are Monsieur Hollande's policies directly opposed to the austerity policies the Irish government wants voters to endorse? Is there direct conflict there?
Yes, very much so. And Hollande has numerous anti-austerity allies in Greece. where, as we've seen, inconclusive parliamentary elections on Sunday, so a huge vote against the EU bailout package agreed by Merkel and Sarkozy. So he made that, very clear that he wants to spend his way through the euro crisis. And that's a very radical policy. But I would contend that, as I said, we will see a more pragmatic Hollande emerging very soon. He's by no means a revolutionary. I think we'll see a far more pragmatic than ideological Hollande very soon enough.
But at the same time, Dick Roach, sorry, Nabila, but at the same time, Dick Roach, there's talk there of spending your way out of the crisis. Now, are there ways of promoting growth, Dick Roach, that don't mean more debt and more inflation? That's what, for example, the Conservatives in the coalition that's governing the UK would want to know.
The short answer to that is yes, there are, but it is a very complex path. The treaty itself, as I said, is just a starting point, and that has to be explained. And Dennis McShane is correct. I think that we should have been a bit more savvy before setting a date, but a date is set and a referendum has to be won, and the Irish government and in fact the Fianna Fáil party, which supports a yes vote, have to get out now and explain to the people precisely what it is about this particular treaty that is important in terms of it being really a first step. I do believe, and Nabila is correct, from what I know of Monsieur Hollande, he is a very pragmatic person. He comes from a very specific type of training and background. He's not an ideologue. I think that he will know that there are certain things that can and other things that cannot be done. But
indeed.
I do believe that it is a very important point, because the idea that you can simply cut your way out of a very deep and dark recession, I think, is a piece of economic thinking that needs to be revisited. But there are other issues other than that. We need a strong central bank. And I've always believed, and I think Dennis would have heard me saying this, I believe very strongly, for example, that it was a mistake that just two people should have negotiated this treaty. We needed to have a convention on the future of the euro. We still have that opportunity, and indeed Hollande's election victory may give us the opportunity to revisit the issue and put in place the full set of measures that are needed to give the Irish and the European people hope.
Dennis McShane, do you think the European project can survive?
I hope so, because the alternative is a sort of Balkanization of Europe. And goodness knows, when you look at both Serbia and Greece, surely that's the last thing we want. Hollande, yeah, I've known him for 15 years. He's very friendly. He likes Britain. He's an Anglophile, I'd say. And most of his ministers know Britain, speak English well. They are pragmatic, but they are a new generation that wants, as I say, to clean up politics. They're going to be a lot harder, I'd suggest, than Nabila and maybe even Dick imagine. I don't think they're going to cause a huge row, the fiscal pact treaty. They have said quite clearly they don't want to renegotiate the words. They want to add something to it. And if that's achievable, and I think it is, that may even help the...
But you see, the problem is, the problem is, Dennis McShane, the message overwhelmingly from voters, be it in the Netherlands, be it in Romania, be it in France, the message overwhelmingly is we will have no more of austerity. Now, whatever about pragmatism and compromise, there has to be some sort of change, because that's what people have clearly voted for.
No, I agree with you very much. And the message from the British elections, England, Scotland, Wales, last Thursday was, we don't like what this government is doing. I mean, it was a bit local. Well, actually, they threw out all the ideas of local mayors and local issues. And I'm afraid the last 4 or 5 years after the crash, the collapse of the financial system, the end, I think, of a long 30-year run, you can call it neoliberalism or globalization or get-rich-quick era, we're in a transition period, and Hollande represents the beginning of a new era. And you're absolutely right. Now, that can be done. I mean, austerity, balancing your budget in Germany, where Germany's in a good position, isn't the same as throwing hundreds of thousands out of work in Greece or England or Ireland. And that's a big difference. And I think it's thinking caps on, guys. Hollande represents a big chance for Europe to break out of this very conservative, very right-wing 1930s type of economic treasury bean counting policy.
All right, and a final word, and in a sentence, Dick Roach, in a sentence, if you would, Is the government going to carry the referendum, Dick Roche?
I think the government will, and I think that the point that Dennis made shouldn't be lost sight of. This is an opportunity, and in fact, you don't have to rewrite the whole treaty. There are precedents for adding clauses to treaties, as we well know in Ireland, and that can be done. But I do think that there needs to be a more focused campaign in Ireland than we've seen so far. It has to be positive.
Dick Roche, Dennis McShane, Nabila Ramdani, thank you all.